I use this example, like how many times do you come home and like your laptop just won't connect to Wi-Fi? And you got to go and you reboot your laptop and it doesn't connect, or you got to go and reboot your router and do the whole unplugging it thing, and and so like the reliability, you don't want that to happen with your camera. Now imagine that with 30 cameras in a facility.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us again for another episode of the In the Trenches Roundtables. Today, we're going to be doing another Mythbusters episode, one of my favorite. I love these series. And today's topic, or the myth that we're going to be busting and discussing, is wireless. Wireless, the new age topic.
Wireless.
Exactly.
Oh,
Everything's
but it's got a
wireless.
wire on it. What? A cell phone has a wire?
That's right. That's right. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. We've got an awesome panel of experts here. Gil, James, thanks so much for jumping on with us. Appreciate
Yes,
it.
sir.
So wireless, I mean, this is all right. Let's just jump in. No better way to do it. I think a question that comes up often is, everything is moving to wireless. Why aren't cameras wireless? And more
Why? Yeah,
specifically, why aren't security cameras wireless?
it's kind of like, why aren't all cameras wireless? Why are we dealing with wires at all? It's
Right.
2020. It's 2023.
Right. Like, come on,
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I
And
listen to
then
music without wires anymore,
I think that's the biggest onion with layers to peel back that there is in our industry, right? Is
Yeah.
wired and wireless. So
Yeah. It's a juicy
commercial
topic.
grade cameras can be wireless, but in most cases, people want that reliability of the wire, of the transmission of data, And we know that wireless just kind of sends signals out there and expects something to pick them up, and things can get in the middle of those signals. So that's one thing. I know there's a bunch more. James is ready to go.
Yeah, I think like you talk about, the number one thing is the reliability. So security cameras are for security, right? You want them to be running 24/7 to capture incidents that happen. I see this example, like how many times do you come home and like your laptop just won't connect to Wi-Fi? And you got to go and you reboot your laptop and it doesn't connect, or you got to go and reboot your router and do the whole unplugging it thing, and and so like the reliability, you don't want that to happen with your camera. Now imagine that with 30 cameras in a facility. All of a sudden you're going from managing one or two, maybe not that big of a deal, all the way up to 30 cameras that you're going to have to potentially configure and make sure they're working correctly, the signal hasn't changed, everything like that. I mean, give you an example, I have like gigabit speed internet, and last night I'm watching the hockey game and my stream keeps cutting into like low quality garbage. I can't even see the puck, right? And so I'm getting all upset. I'm like, I can pay for this internet. My Wi-Fi, I got a really good wireless setup in my house, but it just it's not working right because it's wire. And what's the downside for me there? I'm kind of upset that I'm not seeing the clarity I want. What if that was a security situation? Then you're losing, somebody's breaking in, and all of a sudden the camera drops off and you can't get it. And it's all about the reliability and security. When you're watching a hockey game, wireless is fine. When you're trying to secure your business, then it's not so fine, basically.
Yeah. And then constant power. Power is obviously the next key to the puzzle, right? Because, I used to always tell people that ask for wireless, well, wireless isn't really wire free. There is wire free, and that's battery powered or solar powered. But most, commercial grade video surveillance equipment is meant to be wired and powered by a source for one, redundancy, because you can back up power. And that's very important if it's a secure location that requires its security to be up and operational 24/7. And obviously you don't want to worry about changing batteries and such like that. So, constant power to cameras is important, and not having to worry about it is even more important.
Right. I think that you guys are, covering, all of the key topics and the main things to be considering. the reliability, James, you said security cameras are for security. They're also for other things. And for businesses, it could mean liability reasons, and
Yeah.
the last thing you'd want to rely on is a wire-free or wireless camera to record a slip and fall, right? What if it didn't
Right.
record that slip and fall? No,
I mean,
exactly.
there's advantages to wireless or wire-free for certain applications. Absolutely. I mean, if we're talking residential or consumer, most of them don't want wires, especially if it's a house or something. They don't want wires showing. They don't want to go through the hassle or the expense of putting in wiring in their house if it doesn't already have it. So there's a lot to that, plus powering the cameras. If they're looking for local power sources for cameras that aren't battery powered, then they're looking for plugs to plug into. It's just the whole thing, right?
Mhm.
But it's easy. It's wireless cameras, especially wire free that are battery powered, are easy to install and mount. So if security is just a concern, but not a requirement or something you're super worried about, that might be the way you go. But I'd say any commercial security requirement, I would never consider it, except for when we're talking about wireless backhauls, which I'm sure we'll get into in a bit.
Exactly.
And I think it's even important to talk about like what the difference between wireless and wire free, right? We've used these two terms, but like a lot of wireless cameras out there, they communicate their video, they communicate the data through a wireless or Wi-Fi, and they go back to your network, and that's how they connect. But they still actually need a power source, so they're not wire free in the sense that you just plop them up there and they're good to go. You still need that wire to power it. Whereas wire-free cameras are battery operated. They don't have any wires connected to them, and they operate off a battery. But they're very different in terms of actually how they work. I think we should probably get into that as well. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to spend some time unpacking that because and let's just do it. Let's jump right in, right? Not all wireless cameras are wire free. And so let's take some time to just explain some of the things that we're talking about here. What exactly does wireless mean when we talk about a camera? For it to be completely wireless, what does that mean?
We're talking about the data transmission. We're talking about, the transmission of the information from the camera to the source being network switch that's connected to the internet that people can view through apps and such, or to a recording device locally or through the cloud. So that's, to me, what wireless is as far as that transmission.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's
yeah, but
perfect.
key is you're still going to probably have. Let's see if it won't blur on me. This thing here, which is a power.
Yeah.
You're still going to get that with the wireless cameras. So. And most cameras are just wireless. They're not necessarily wire free unless they're kind of specifically saying it. And that's kind of sometimes a surprise for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And so that's a great definition. And I think we need to just be abundantly clear, right? When people hear or the terms thrown out there, wireless camera, that does not mean that there is no wire, right? And so that's where you need to look for terms like wire free. And let's define that for the audience. What does wire free mean?
Yeah, so wire free is a camera that has a battery in it, and so they're actually really truly wireless because there are no wires that you need to connect to it. Now, obviously, you need to charge it initially, and then you're going to have to charge it, as it dies down and everything like that too. But they fundamentally work very different than your traditional like wireless, or even wired security camera system because when the way the battery operated cameras can last for a couple of months or so is that they go basically into a standby or off mode when nobody's near the camera. So there's actually like a physical PIR motion sensor near the camera. And when you get into the range of that sensor, which is usually like 15 or 20 feet from it, it's going to turn itself on and then it's going to start recording. And then after maybe like 60 seconds, it's going to turn right off. So that's a very different way for security. And that that works great for like your home. You want to know when somebody's approaching your home and that's it, then great. Wire-free camera is probably a good option for you. But it's not really good for other situations because you can't look at the cameras live. You can't, they're not displaying live view all the time because they're off most of the time. the playback's only going to be within a very short range. So if somebody's doing something 25, 30 feet away from the camera and the camera doesn't turn on, then you might be SOL on that one too. The other thing to consider with that too is like if that there most of them have timeouts. So like after 60 seconds, the camera has to go back off so it doesn't kill the battery. You know, you could have an argument or a fight there at the front door, and then the camera just shuts off right before the punch, and it's like stuff like that happens all the time with some of those wire-free ones. So they're great for home because it's not a massive deal potentially if it misses something, but they're not great for obviously commercial applications. I think is
Right.
kind of the key there.
Yeah, the key, I think what you're saying is constant transmission versus intermittent transmission.
Yep, that's a great way to
Most
put it.
commercial systems require constant transmission 24/7. Are they recording all that time? No, but they're always providing a live view of some kind, and that eats up batteries. That's why in a commercial setting, you will see occasionally solar powered, which provides the power to the batteries for the cameras that are churning up power 24/7 to transmit the signal, but other than that, in a commercial setting, most of the time, the only time we really use wireless is for a backhaul transmission type application, and those are typically powered through a local source on the building of some kind.
And again, this is a good segue into, there is a right way to do wireless in a commercial setting, right? And I think that's where we should spend some time talking about what we referred to as a wireless backhaul, right? And when, I want to start by defining some things, and first probably defining like wireless backhaul, what we mean in the sense when we use it. But using an Arlo, a Eufy, right, a stick up wire-free or wireless camera for a commercial application, we would never recommend. We would, suggest against it. There's right ways to do wireless and commercial, and that's what we're going to talk about now.
Absolutely. Agreed.
So how would we define wireless backhaul?
So wireless backhaul would be the transmission of data from one location to another that wire cannot be ran to and from. So basically, if you have a building A and you want to your recording devices and or equipment is in that building, and you have 3 cameras in building B, and there's nothing in between A and B to run cable, no underground conduit, and client doesn't really want to put any in, then you have what we call as wireless backhaul, which is the transmission of signal from building B to building A, that will transmit and receive the signal out into a wired solution, which is a network switch typically, and then go to your recording device. So the backhaul portion is that it's actually transmitting 3 camera signals via wireless transmission that requires line of sight, and we'll explain that further in a bit, to a receiver that will take it back in, switch it over to a wired solution, and then it's all good to go from there. So that's my theory of the back.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect because it goes hand in hand with earlier we explained what wireless means in a sense, right? And it's that data transmission happening without a physical wire. And what is a wireless backhaul? The exact same thing in a commercial setting. It's the data transmission from point to point or an antenna without a physical cable being in place. And so,
and all fully powered, powered by location.
Yeah.
The transmitter and receiver all require power. The cameras require power. Everything in those locations require power. So power is provided by the building / electric pole / whatever, we're putting the device.
Right. In some cases, solar, like we just mentioned. Exactly.
Correct.
And I think the key word there is like backhaul. This isn't one camera connecting back to your recorder or your network. It's specifically for, building A to building B, and then building A building A is the main building. Building B is the one where you have your network and stuff in there, and you're connecting all your stuff to that network. And those types of wireless bridges or backhauls, like we use a big Ubiquiti equipment typically for those. They're proven. They're very reliable. They're well known. And I think they're providing a very totally different signal than kind of Wi-Fi as well. That's the other key thing there. So they're providing a very strong point-to-point connection between those two things, very narrow in its scope. Whereas like if you have a big campus and you're trying to put wireless cameras everywhere, you're having to really cast a really wide net. So that's why it just doesn't work that well for that. So
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, remember, we're talking about there's three types of wireless backhaul or gateways. There's point to point, point to multipoint, and wireless mesh. So within those three, we can work signals back to the head end, we'll say, which is where the recording is being done, to get camera signals, to and from. In most cases, we try to work with point to point. The frequencies that we use are smaller frequencies that don't really get sent out in a in a cast formation like a Wi-Fi signal does. They're really more direct. It's usually in the 5.8 gigahertz range. Not to get too technical, but that signal is very defined and very specific.
I think just to kind of sum that up a little bit too, like these wireless backhauls that we're talking about are installed, maintained, and set up by a professional. This isn't something you go into Walmart and grab like your wireless mesh router, and they're very complex, pretty complicated things that you need somebody who knows what they're doing to install them and even maintain them. So that's why not that it's like the last resort in a lot of these situations, but obviously if you have a regular wired connection between buildings, that's better than wireless backhaul. But yeah, I think that's the key point. This is obviously something that's not a convenience thing, it's a requirement thing.
Correct.
Definitely. And I don't want to jump into the weeds too deep into wireless backhauls. I think we should, we're probably going to do a video on its own, right?
Yeah.
I think it's important to just state why we're talking about this. Well, we're talking about this because if you're, a residential person who has a outbuilding or barn and you want cameras or surveillance on that barn, right? Your traditional wire-free or wireless stick-up UV Arlos nests will be perfect, great for that application. But if you're a business, you're an auto dealership and you have your showroom and then your service bay in the back of your lot and maybe a satellite service, used car sales building across the street, well, those wireless UV Arlo stick-up cameras are not even going to be an option. You would need to look into wireless backhauls, the right way to do wireless in a commercial setting. That's why we're kind of discussing all this stuff here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Impact that.
Bustin' minute.
That's right. So I wonder, is there anything else that we're missing? Anything that we should cover that we haven't already discussed? Wireless.
No, I mean, we don't want to, dissuade anyone from thinking that we're pro or con anything. We're just stating the facts of what our experiences are with installing this equipment and using it properly. Because there are some pros and cons to both sides. But in a commercial environment, to me, the pros clearly outweigh the cons if you want good, secure, reliable transmission of your video surveillance data. If you use a wired system, and in last resort, a wireless backhaul transmission for camera signal.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I could have said it better myself. I think when you invest in wires and you wire these cameras up, you're making a one-time investment that's going to last potentially decades into that building. So you don't have to worry about, okay, my two of my wireless cameras are down. I'm going to have to get IT involved, and you know how those guys are when you have to ask them for things sometimes. Just kidding. But yeah, I mean, seriously, you don't want to have maintain a staff to deal with these wireless cameras constantly, because they are going to be an issue. There are going to be more maintenance where, wireless, it sounds great because it might be cheaper, everything like that. You think it's going to be, you're not having to factor in the labor and the wiring and everything like that, but it's going to be a longer term cost of ownership. It's going to be a lot higher for wireless and wired. So.
Great.
Any final thoughts from either of you two on wireless? Anything that we're discussing today? I think that was a pretty good synopsis in itself right there. So with that being said, we'll have some articles linked to the description above. Okay, I did that wrong. So I'm just gonna cover both ways. No, but seriously, we really appreciate you tuning in. If you have any comments or feedback for us, drop them in the comments below. Check out some of our resources in the description. Contact us if you have any questions. We're happy to help in any way, even if it's just to answer generic questions about wireless, wire-free, hardwired, any of that stuff.
Awesome.
So thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks,
We'll
everyone.
be sure to see you next time on In the Trenches. Thanks so much.
See ya.
Bye for now.
Ciao.